They told me my husband died at 34,000 feet. They said the plane went down in the ocean, swallowed by clouds and fire, leaving no survivors, no goodbyes, no final words, no chance to say I love you one last time. I remember the knock on the door. 3 slow knocks, not urgent, not loud, just final. When I opened it, 2 uniformed officers stood there, faces carefully blank, eyes already apologizing. Behind them, a woman from the airline clutched a folder to her chest like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Mrs. Carter?" one of them asked. My knees weakened before he finished the sentence. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm very sorry." "There's been an accident." The words blurred together after that. "Plane. Malfunction, no survivors. Investigation ongoing." I remember screaming. I remember collapsing. I remember the floor pressing cold against my cheek. And I remember thinking, this can't be real. He kissed me goodbye this morning. Daniel had promised to call the moment he landed. He was traveling for work. Another international contract, another one last trip before things slowed down. 3 days, he'd said, smiling as he tightened his tie. Then I'm all yours. That promise buried itself inside me like a cruel joke. The days after the crash passed like a foggy nightmare. News channels replayed the footage on repeat. Wreckage floating in the sea. Reporters speaking in hushed tones. Experts speculating about what went wrong. I waited for his body. It never came. They told me it was impossible to recover remains. "No closure," my mother said gently, holding my hands. "But you must accept it." Accept it? How do you accept that the man you shared a bed with for 12 years simply vanished into the sky? The funeral was symbolic. An empty casket. White flowers. People crying for a body that wasn't there. I stood in black, numb, listening to condolences that felt rehearsed. "He's in a better place. At least he didn't suffer. You're strong. You'll get through this." Strong. I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. The weeks turned into months, the months into years. I learned how to survive without him, how to sleep alone, how to eat without cooking for 2, how to silence the instinct to reach for my phone every night at 9 p.m. I packed his clothes into boxes I never opened again. I kept his toothbrush in the cup for a year. I wore his jacket when it rained, just to feel his weight on my shoulders. 3 years passed. 3 years of grief. 3 years of therapy. 3 years of rebuilding a life around a ghost. Eventually, I moved to a new city. A fresh start, everyone said. New job, new apartment, new routines. I stopped checking the news. Stopped replaying the crash in my head. Stopped asking why. I thought the story was over. I was wrong. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was in a grocery store parking lot, fumbling with my keys, half listening to a voicemail from my boss. That's when I heard a laugh. A laugh I knew better than my own name. My hand froze midair. I turned slowly. Across the lot, a man stood beside a silver SUV, lifting a little boy into the back seat. A woman stood nearby, smiling, brushing hair from her face. The man bent down, kissed the child's forehead, and my heart stopped. It was Daniel, not someone who looked like him. Not a coincidence, not a trick of grief. It was my husband. Same posture, same crooked smile. Same scar above his right eyebrow. Alive. Breathing, laughing. My vision blurred. The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't real." My body moved before my mind caught up. I walked toward them, my legs trembling with every step. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might rip itself out of my chest. "Daniel," I said. The name fell from my lips like a prayer and a curse at the same time. He turned, and in that instant, when his eyes met mine, I saw it. Recognition, shock, fear. Pure, unmistakable terror. His face drained of color. The woman beside him frowned. "Daniel, who is she?" He didn't answer her. He was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. Because in his world, I was supposed to be dead. The boy tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy? Daddy." The word echoed in my ears. My knees buckled. "Daniel," I said again, my voice shaking, tears streaming freely now. "You're alive." He took a step back. "Stay away from me," he hissed under his breath. "You shouldn't be here." The woman's smile vanished. "What is going on?" I laughed then, a broken, hysterical sound. "I buried you," I said. "I mourned you for 3 years. I watched the plane crash footage until I couldn't sleep. And now you're telling me I shouldn't be here?" He glanced around nervously. "Get in the car," he snapped at the woman. She hesitated. "Daniel, now!" She obeyed, confusion written all over her face. Daniel stepped closer to me, his voice low and urgent. "You need to leave. Forget you saw me." I stared at him, shaking. "You let me believe you were dead," I whispered. "Why?" His jaw clenched. "This conversation never happened," he said. "If you value your life, walk away." Then he turned, got into the car, and drove off, leaving me standing in the parking lot, surrounded by strangers, clutching my chest as the truth shattered everything I thought I knew. My husband didn't die in that plane crash. He escaped, and whatever he was hiding was far darker than death. The days after the funeral blurred into one long, suffocating silence. I woke up every morning expecting to hear Daniel's footsteps, his careless humming, the sound of him making coffee too strong. But the apartment stayed quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that presses against your chest until breathing hurts. Everyone said the same things. "You're strong. He loved you. At least you had good years together." But none of those words helped when I reached for my phone out of habit, ready to text him something stupid, something ordinary, only to remember there was no one on the other side anymore. The official report arrived 2 weeks later. No survivors, no recovered remains, cause, mechanical failure, closed case. They said his body had been lost to the ocean, that there was nothing left to bury. Just memories. I signed papers with shaking hands. Death certificates on insurance claims. Legal forms written in cold language that reduced my husband's life to numbers and signatures. I hated every page. The life insurance payout came 3 months later. I almost rejected it. It felt wrong, like accepting blood money for a life that should still be here. But the bills didn't stop just because my heart had. Rent, utilities. Car payments, grief didn't care about deadlines. So I survived. That's what everyone called it. Survival. But surviving isn't living. I stopped wearing color, stopped going out. Friends invited me less and less after I declined too many times. I couldn't stand happy couples, laughter, future plans. Everything reminded me of what I had lost. Nights were the worst. That's when memories attacked without mercy. Daniel's laugh, the way he tucked his arm around me in his sleep. The scar on his shoulder he got when we were dating. I replayed our last conversation over and over. "Text me when you land," I'd said. "I will. Love you," he'd replied. He never landed. A year passed, then 2. People said it was time to move on, as if grief had a schedule. I returned to work full-time, functioning on autopilot. I learned how to smile without feeling it, how to say I'm fine without lying, because fine didn't mean happy. It meant breathing. Sometimes I dreamed of him. In those dreams, he never spoke. He just looked at me, sad, distant, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. I always woke up crying. On the 3rd anniversary of his death, I visited the memorial plaque by the sea. There was no grave, just a polished stone with his name etched into it. Daniel Hart, beloved husband. Gone too soon. I touched the cold letters and whispered, "I miss you." That night something strange happened. I found myself going through old boxes in the closet, things I hadn't touched since the funeral. Papers, photos, random junk from our early years. That's when I noticed something odd. A folder, unlabeled. Inside were copies of Daniel's passport, bank statements, and emails I had never seen before. Accounts I didn't recognize, a phone number saved under no name. My heart skipped. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe work-related. Maybe something he forgot to explain. But doubt, once planted, doesn't stay quiet. Over the next few weeks, I paid closer attention to the past. I reread old messages, studied photos, looked for signs I had missed. And suddenly, things didn't line up the way I remembered. Daniel had traveled more than I realized. He'd taken calls outside. He'd once mentioned starting over in a way I'd laughed off. At the time, I thought it was stress. Now, I wasn't so sure. Still, I pushed the thoughts away. He was dead. That was the truth I'd built my life around, until the day everything shattered. It happened on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was at a shopping center across town, waiting in line at a cafe, half listening to the barista call out orders. That's when I saw him. At first, my brain refused to process it. The man standing near the window had Daniel's posture, Daniel's walk, Daniel's exact profile. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might faint. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." He turned slightly, and I saw his face, older, a bit thinner, but unmistakable. Daniel, alive, breathing, laughing. He had his arm around a little girl, maybe 5 years old, who was holding a balloon. Beside him stood a woman, her hand resting comfortably on his back, like she belonged there. like she had always belonged there. The world tilted, my knees weakened. I grabbed the counter to keep from collapsing. This wasn't grief, this wasn't a dream. This was real, the man I buried. The man I mourned, the man whose name was carved into stone, was standing 10 feet away, alive, with another family. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. Daniel didn't die in that plane crash. He disappeared. And I had been mourning a man who chose to erase me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him again, standing there alive, solid, real. The same posture, the same walk, the same way he tilted his head when he laughed. This wasn't grief. This wasn't trauma. This was recognition. By morning, I made a decision that terrified me. I was going to find him. I started with the simplest thing, the hotel receipt I'd grabbed from the trash at the cafe where I first saw him. It listed a name I didn't recognize, Michael Carter. But the handwriting on the signature line? That handwriting haunted me. Because I'd seen it 1,000 times. On birthday cards, on school permission slips. On love notes left on the fridge, my husband's handwriting. My hands shook as I searched public records. Property registrations, utility bills, school enrollments, and then I found it. A suburban house, registered under Michael Carter, married. 2 children. My stomach dropped. 2 children. I drove there without thinking. My mind screamed at me to stop, to turn back, to protect myself from whatever truth waited at the end of that road. But my heart wouldn't let me. The house was perfect, white fence. Toys in the yard, a basketball hoop. Wind chimes on the porch. A life, his life. I parked across the street and waited. Minutes felt like hours. Then the front door opened. A woman stepped out first, early 30s, warm smile, holding a toddler on her hip. She laughed, calling back inside. And then he stepped out. My husband, alive, breathing, smiling, wearing a wedding ring that wasn't ours. I couldn't breathe. He bent down, kissed the toddler's forehead, and ruffled the hair of an older boy who ran out after him yelling, "Daddy, wait!" Daddy, the word sliced through me like glass. My vision blurred, my chest burned. Every part of me wanted to scream, to run toward him, to demand answers. But my body refused to move. I watched him load the kids into the car with the same patience he used to show our son when he was small. The same gentle hands, the same laugh. Nothing about him had changed, except that he had erased me. When they drove away, I finally broke. I sobbed so hard I thought my heart would tear apart. 3 years of mourning, 3 years of grief, 3 years of believing I was a widow. And all that time, he was alive, living, loving, pretending I never existed. I didn't confront him that day. I went home. And I planned. I pulled out the old documents I had sealed away after the crash, the death certificate, insurance papers, the final report. That's when I noticed something I had missed before. His body had never been recovered. The plane was listed as destroyed, but several passengers were marked unidentified remains. And the investigation closed unusually fast. I contacted an old friend of my husband's, someone who had worked with him overseas. When I told him what I'd seen, there was a long pause. Then he said quietly, "I always thought something was off." My blood ran cold. He explained that my husband had been under investigation years ago, not criminal, but financial. Offshore accounts, identity restructuring, corporate whistleblower threats. Then he said the words that confirmed my nightmare. He talked once about disappearing. I hung up shaking. This wasn't an accident. This was an escape. My husband had faked his death, taken insurance money, taken a new name, taken a new wife, taken a new life, and left me to bury a ghost. That night I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman staring back wasn't a grieving widow anymore. She was someone who had been betrayed in the most calculated, cruel way imaginable. I whispered to my reflection, "You thought I'd never find you." I wiped my tears, "But you forgot something. You were married to me." And I knew then, this wasn't just about answers, this was about justice. Because if he thought disappearing erased his past, he was about to learn how wrong he was. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him again. Daniel's face, older, sharper, unmistakably alive. The way he had laughed with the little boy, the way his hand rested naturally on that woman's back, the way he belonged there. Not to me, not anymore. By sunrise, grief had turned into something colder, clearer. Truth doesn't scream, it waits. And I was done waiting. The next morning, I returned to the same neighborhood. This time I parked farther away and watched. The house looked ordinary, white fence, trimmed hedges, a swing set in the yard. A family home, his family home. At 7:42 a.m., the door opened. Daniel stepped out, adjusting his jacket. The woman followed, handing him a lunch bag. She kissed his cheek. The boy hugged his leg. A routine, a life, one he had stolen from me. I followed him carefully, quietly. He drove to a business district downtown. The sign outside the building made my stomach drop. Hawthorne Consulting Group. I knew that name. Daniel and I had dreamed of starting that firm together. I had helped write the first business plan. I had invested my inheritance into the future we never got. After his death, the firm vanished, or so I thought. I walked into the lobby an hour later, my heart pounding, my face calm. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked. "Yes," I said evenly. "I'm here to see Daniel Hawthorne." She smiled. "Of course he's in a meeting, but you can wait." No hesitation, no confusion, no ghost. He was real, very real. When Daniel stepped into the lobby and saw me standing there, the color drained from his face. For the first time since the plane crash, he looked afraid. "Elena," he whispered. I didn't move. Didn't blink, didn't scream. "I died," I said softly, "the day you did." The receptionist sensed something wrong and quietly stepped away. Daniel swallowed hard. "You shouldn't be here." "Oh, I think I should," I replied. "You were declared dead. I buried you. I mourned you, and now I find you living another man's dream, with another woman's name." He gestured toward a private room. "Please let me explain." Explain. That word used to mean something. Now it meant nothing. Inside the conference room, the truth began to unravel. The plane crash had been real. The passenger list had been real. The bodies, real, just not his. Daniel had switched flights at the last minute. Paid cash, used a fake ID. The crash gave him the perfect exit. "I was drowning," he said. "Debt pressure, expectations. I needed a reset." "A reset?" My voice cracked. "You erased me." He looked down. "I couldn't bring you with me." That hurt more than the lie. The woman, his wife, was named Claire. She believed Daniel was widowed. The boy thought Daniel was his biological father. 3 years. 3 stolen years. 3 years of lies stacked on top of graves. "And the business?" I asked. Daniel hesitated. "You funded it," he admitted. "Your money saved it. I rebuilt it for them." My hands shook, but I didn't let him see. "Do they know?" I asked quietly. "No, of course not." I stood slowly. "You didn't just fake your death," I said. "You committed fraud, insurance fraud, identity theft, bigamy." His eyes widened. "Elena, please. Don't do this," I smiled. For the first time since I recognized him. A smile with teeth. "You built this new life on my ashes," I said. "And now you're going to watch it burn." I walked out before he could stop me. But I didn't go home. I went to a lawyer, a very good one. By the end of the week, the truth had teeth. Insurance investigators reopened the case. Authorities flagged his identity. The business accounts were frozen. And Claire? Claire knocked on my door 3 days later. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking. "He told me everything," she said. Or at least, his version. I invited her in. And then I showed her mine. Documents. Photos, marriage certificates. Death records. Her world collapsed the way mine once had. "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I believe you," I said. "But that doesn't change what he did." Together, we confronted him. Daniel didn't beg this time. He broke. His double life crumbled in hours. The man who once escaped death now faced something worse. Exposure. And this time, there would be no escape. Because the final truth, the one that would destroy him completely, had yet to be revealed. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, alive, breathing, laughing, holding another child like it was the most natural thing in the world. The man I had buried, the man I had mourned for 3 years, the man whose coffin I kissed goodbye, and now the man who had destroyed my entire reality. At dawn, I made my decision. I wasn't going to confront him emotionally. I wasn't going to scream, cry, or beg for answers. I was going to uncover everything. I started with the basics. Public records, flight manifests, insurance documents, death certificates, things I had trusted blindly because grief had made me weak. And then I found the first crack. The plane crash report listed his body as unrecoverable. No remains, no DNA confirmation, just assumed deceased due to circumstances. My hands shook as I read that sentence, assumed. I contacted a private investigator that same morning. A woman named Clara, calm, sharp-eyed, and terrifyingly efficient. "I think my husband faked his death," I told her. She didn't laugh. She didn't doubt me. She just asked, "When did you last see him alive?" 3 days ago, I whispered. With another family. That was all she needed. Within a week, Clara uncovered more than I had in 3 years of marriage. My husband had been planning this for over 5 years. Secret bank accounts overseas, a second passport, a carefully staged financial trail. The plane crash, real. His death, not. He had switched seats last minute, paid someone desperate enough to take his place. A man whose identity disappeared with the wreckage. My stomach turned when Clara told me. "He let another man die as him," I said, barely able to breathe. "Yes," she replied. "And he walked away with the insurance money, a clean slate, and a new life. A new wife, a new child, a new name. While I was left drowning in grief, raising our son alone, attending therapy, and learning how to breathe without him. He had been building a dream life on the ashes of mine." Then came the worst discovery. He had watched us. Clara showed me photos, surveillance shots from across the street, a cafe, a park. "He visited your city twice," she said softly. "Stayed at a nearby hotel. He saw you. He saw your son." I felt something inside me break, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. "He saw us," I whispered, "and still stayed dead, yes. He chose his new family." I thought I would collapse. Instead, something cold and powerful settled into my chest. "Can you find where he lives?" I asked. Clara nodded. "Already did. A quiet suburban neighborhood. White fence, school bus stop, family barbecues, a perfect lie. I drove there alone. I didn't go to his house. I didn't confront him. I parked across the street and waited. And then I saw her, his new wife, young, smiling, pregnant. She looked like someone who trusted him completely, just like I once did. And that's when I realized something important. She didn't know. She thought he was a widower, or divorced, or something clean and believable. She didn't know she was married to a ghost. That night, I returned home and opened the old safe in my closet, the one that still held his documents. Marriage papers, insurance claims, letters he had written before the trip. And then I found it, a letter addressed to me, not mailed, not delivered, just stored. It was dated 1 week before the crash. If you're reading this, it means I went through with it. Please don't try to find me. This is the only way I could be free. Free from me, from our son, from responsibility. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was monstrous. He hadn't escaped a life. He had abandoned it. I called Clara immediately. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want justice," she paused. "Those are very different paths." "I want both," I replied calmly. Because what he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that legally, emotionally, and financially, he had made a catastrophic mistake. And the next part of this story? That's when everything began to collapse around him, because you can fake your death. But you can't escape the truth forever. I stood across the street, hidden behind the glass of a cafe window, watching the man who was once my entire world tuck a little girl's hair behind her ear. She smiled up at him and called him Dad. That word hit me harder than the plane crash ever had. 3 years ago, I buried my husband. Today, I watched him live a life he had stolen from me. He looked older, more careful, less reckless, but undeniably him. The same way he tilted his head when listening, the same nervous habit of rubbing his thumb against his wedding ring finger, except the ring was gone. Replaced by another woman stood beside him, watching their children laugh. She leaned into him naturally, comfortably, like she had earned that place over years, not lies. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't cry. I was done giving him tears. Instead, I made a call. The investigator I'd hired months earlier answered immediately. "I found him," I said calmly. "I'm ready." Within days, everything moved fast. Records confirmed what my heart already knew. My husband had staged his death. The plane crash had been real, but he wasn't on it. He'd switched identities using forged documents, drained offshore accounts, and vanished into a new country with the woman who had been his lover long before the crash. While I mourned, while I learned to survive, while I rebuilt myself from ashes, he had been building a new life. But he'd made one mistake. He underestimated silence. The law caught up to him swiftly. Insurance fraud, identity falsification, bigamy, financial crimes, everything neatly documented. When authorities knocked on his door, His children were eating breakfast. The woman screamed. He didn't. He just closed his eyes. When they brought him in for questioning, he finally asked to see me. 3 years of questions lived inside me. But when I sat across from him in that cold interview room, I realized I didn't need answers anymore. I loved you, I said quietly. You let me believe you were dead. His voice cracked. I didn't think you'd survive it. I laughed softly. That's where you were wrong. He tried to explain. Fear, pressure, another woman pregnant, a moment that spiraled out of control. But explanations don't erase choices. You didn't die in that crash, I said. The man I married did. Court proceedings followed. Headlines followed. His second life collapsed publicly, brutally. The woman left him. The children were placed with relatives. Every account frozen, every lie exposed. And me, I didn't get justice because he suffered. I got justice because I stood tall through it. The final hearing ended quietly. No drama, no shouting. Just truth on record. As I walked out of the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. How does it feel to see him again? Do you hate him? Would you forgive him? I stopped and turned. I buried a man who didn't deserve my grief, I said. Today I reclaim my life. That night I went home. Not to the woman who had waited for a ghost, but to the woman who survived betrayal, deception, and abandonment, and still chose strength. I packed the last box of memories I'd kept out of habit. Photos, letters, a ring I no longer needed. Some stories don't end with love. They end with clarity, and clarity is freedom. As the sun rose the next morning, I realized something profound. He didn't destroy me. He freed me, and this time I walked forward without ghosts behind me.